Dr. Aurelia Mercer could calculate molecular interactions in her sleep. She could recite the entire periodic table backward. She once corrected a Nobel Prize winner on a miscalculation during a private conference, and he'd laughed and called her the girl with lightning in her fingers. But no one had warned her how quickly a glass of chilled champagne could grow warm in her hand when surrounded by people she didn't trust, even when those people shared her last name. The gala sparkled around her like the inside of a snow globe. Glittering chandeliers, polished marble floors, and walls adorned with cascading gold silk banners bearing the Mercer family crest, a double helix woven into the shape of a crown. Scientists, politicians, CEOs, and military brass mingled beneath it, lifting glasses to toast the Mercer legacy. And to Aurelia, the golden daughter. She adjusted the neckline of her emerald gown, resisting the urge to wipe her damp palm on the expensive fabric. Her father was speaking again, his voice rising above the soft music and polite laughter.
And this year,
Alton Mercer declared from the podium,
we celebrate the historic approval of Project Halo, developed under the tireless leadership of my brilliant daughter, Dr. Aurelia Mercer.
Applause! Cameras flashed. Aurelia offered the smallest of smiles, stepping into the spotlight as instructed. Her heels clicked softly on the stage floor. Her hair, dark and sleek, had been forced into gentle waves by the stylist hired for the night. Her skin glowed under the lights. She looked every inch the proud heir, the genius, the picture of composure. But inside, her stomach turned. Project Halo wasn't something she was ready to celebrate. Not yet. It wasn't even finished. Sure, the council had approved it, on paper, but the pheromone stabilizers still showed irregularities in certain bloodlines. If anyone in this room knew how unstable the prototype was, they'd revoke the contracts immediately. She swallowed her hesitation and took the mic.
Thank you, she said smoothly. I'm honored to be entrusted with work that could help bridge two worlds. Science is only as powerful as the peace it protects. I hope Project Halo marks the beginning of that peace.
More applause. Flashbulbs. Behind the cameras, she caught a glimpse of her twin sister, Kael, leaning against a column in a silver dress that glittered like starlight. Her hair was wild and undone, her heels already kicked off, and her smirk, sharp and smug, made it clear she hadn't clapped once. Aurelia stepped down, her father wrapping an arm around her shoulders as the crowd surged forward to offer handshakes and congratulations. But she kept her eyes on Kael. Later, when the crowd thinned, she found her twin in the back garden near the fountains, smoking something that definitely wasn't legal in public zones.
Could you at least try not to get arrested tonight? Aurelia asked, arms folded.
Kael exhaled slowly.
Relax, Ree. Nobody's watching me.
That's the problem, she replied softly.
Kael snorted.
Oh, please. You'd hate being invisible. You thrive in the spotlight.
No, Aurelia said, lowering her voice. I thrive in a lab, not paraded around like some scientific trophy.
Kael turned, her expression unreadable.
Then why didn't you say no?
Because that's not how things worked in their family. Saying no wasn't a choice. Aurelia had learned early that being the good twin meant obedience, perfection, and results. She didn't answer. Behind them, security drones buzzed as they hovered into nighttime patrol patterns. Someone inside the building called for another round of speeches. The party was far from over. Kael crushed her cigarette under one bare foot.
Be careful with Halo. Not everyone wants peace as badly as you do.
Before Aurelia could ask what she meant, Kael slipped into the shadows of the garden and vanished. The next morning, Aurelia stood in her private lab, staring at the results of a bloodwork panel that made absolutely no sense. The sample had arrived anonymously through a secure drop, labeled only with the initials KT male, unknown bloodline. The scent markers were off the charts, like the subject had never undergone any suppressant conditioning at all. The pheromone levels were so primal, so unfiltered, they might have been thousands of years old. She leaned over the microscope again, checking for degradation, contamination, or anomalies. None. This blood was pure, wild, and old. Shifter DNA, but not like anything she'd ever seen. It wasn't stable. It was dominant. Her hand hovered over the communication screen. She needed to report this to Dr. Sims at the Council's Biosecurity Division, but something stopped her. What if this blood was sent to her for a reason? Before she could decide, her lab's security system chirped. A level 5 alert flashed across the holoscreen. Project Halo breach. Primary data stolen. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She tapped into the feed. Security footage showed a masked figure, slim, fast, slipping into her terminal at 2:14 a.m. The thief bypassed biometric locks like they were suggestions and downloaded the encrypted pheromone files. Impossible. No one outside the Mercer family had those override codes. Unless... Her fingers hesitated over the file logs. The last override was tagged with a familiar signature. C. Mercer, Kael. 2 hours later, Aurelia was in the council's war room. Cold steel walls, low lighting, and a half circle of powerful figures who rarely met in person. Her father stood at the center, his jaw tense.
She's confused. Kael wouldn't sabotage her own family.
She already has, replied Dr. Sims, throwing the footage up on the screen.
She's my daughter, Alton growled. She's a liability, snapped a gray-haired councilman. And if this breach leads to another feral outbreak in the northern zone, the Mercer name won't protect you.
Ree stood straighter.
I can fix this.
You don't know what she's planning, another councilwoman said. You don't know who has the files now.
I can trace the signature in the code. I built Halo. I can track any fragment of it, even if it's encrypted and mutated.
What you can do, Sims said coldly, is agree to the council's terms.
What terms? Aurelia asked slowly.
He turned to her.
You're being relocated.
No.
You'll be embedded within the Crescent Moon Pack. As of this moment, Alpha Kael Thornridge has agreed to offer you protection and political asylum.
I don't need protection. I need access to my own lab and Kael's location.
Doctor. Mercer, Sims cut in. Your sister's betrayal has triggered an unstable diplomatic situation. The Hollow Claw faction is growing bolder. If we don't secure the Crescent Moon Alliance now, we risk full war.
And you think putting me in the middle of their territory is going to fix it?
Her father finally spoke again.
There's more.
He walked forward carefully, like he was trying not to shatter her already thin calm.
To seal the alliance, the council has arranged a marriage between you and Kael Thornridge.
The air left her lungs.
A fake marriage? She asked, praying she'd misunderstood.
Ceremonial, for now, but binding in territory law.
Aurelia's heart pounded. She didn't even know Kael Thornridge. She knew his name, his power, his war history. His pack had been ungovernable until he took over. He was rumored to have torn apart 3 alphas before claiming leadership. No confirmed images of his shift form existed. Only blurred photos, grainy footage, and whispers of eyes that turned gold in the dark. And now they wanted her to marry him, a man who didn't trust humans. A man whose beta once tore through a lab in protest of human interference. A man who, if rumors were true, had already rejected his mate once and buried her with his own claws. No,
She said, her voice shaking. You can't do this.
I'm sorry, Aurelia, her father said. This is the only way.
Kael Thornridge didn't flinch when the council's messenger read the terms aloud. He stood at the edge of the riverbank, his bare feet sunk in the cold mud, eyes focused on the water as if it could give him an answer. He already knew his response.
Yes, he said quietly.
His beta Rowan swore.
You're going to bind yourself to a Mercer? Have you lost your mind?
She didn't steal from us, Kael replied calmly. She represents the people who did.
Kael turned.
She represents science, stability, leverage.
Rowan stepped closer.
She represents danger.
Kyle's golden eyes glinted.
So do I.
Rowan backed off. Kael looked back to the water, his voice colder now.
Prepare the territory for a human. Make room in the stronghold. Lock down the eastern perimeter.
Rowan hesitated.
And if she tries anything?
Kael bared his teeth, more beast than man for one chilling moment.
Then I'll tear out her throat myself.
Aurelia sat on the transport shuttle 3 days later, watching as the lush human cities gave way to the wild expanse of Lupin Reach. No roads, no walls, just wilderness. And the faint shimmer of energy shields humming in the trees. Her hands were shaking. She didn't know what waited for her on the other side of the border. Only that she'd been sent as a peace offering. A bride, a prisoner, a scientist, and perhaps a weapon.
Welcome to Crescent Moon territory, the guard said as the shuttle slowed. Try not to make the Alpha angry.
She wasn't sure if it was a warning or a joke, but the gates opened, and she stepped into the unknown. Chapter 2. The gates to Crescent Moon territory looked nothing like Aurelia had expected. There were no towering stone walls or iron bars, just a living arch of gnarled trees and thick vines, their leaves a shimmering silver green in the mist. A low, pulsing energy coursed through the air as the transport crossed the threshold, making her skin prickle. A scent hit her next: wild earth, pine sap, and something else. Something ancient and unplaceable. Her escort, a tall soldier named Dax, sat beside her in silence. He wore a council uniform and carried no weapons, only a metal case containing the ceremonial bond documents. He hadn't spoken since they'd left the checkpoint, and he didn't now. Just glanced at her once and said,
"This is where I leave you."
Aurelia turned.
You're not going in?
He raised his brows.
I'm human. That's wolf territory.
With that, he stepped off the shuttle and disappeared into the forest behind them. The door sealed with a soft hiss. Aurelia was alone. The transport hovered forward another 100 feet and came to a stop at a clearing. She pressed her palm to the glass window, squinting. In the center of the glade stood a tall figure, Kael Thornridge. He wore no armor, no crest, no crown, just black pants, boots, and a dark unbuttoned shirt that clung to his powerful frame. His arms were folded across his chest, and the wind stirred strands of dark hair away from his face, revealing sharp cheekbones and a set of golden eyes that locked onto hers with unnerving precision. The door opened. Her heels met the forest floor. He didn't speak, neither did she. For a long suspended breath, they stood in silence, sizing each other up like chess pieces placed on opposite sides of an invisible board. She took in his height, easily over 6 feet, and the way the muscles in his arms flexed with restrained tension. His face was unreadable, all sharp edges and stoic calm. If she hadn't known who he was, she would have assumed he was some kind of warden, a gatekeeper to a place not meant for people like her. Then he spoke.
You're smaller than I expected.
Aurelia blinked.
And you're more talkative than I expected.
That earned a flicker of something in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or a warning. She couldn't tell. He turned without another word and gestured for her to follow. They walked through the clearing and into a stone path that wound between the trees. She realized slowly that there was no city here. No high-rises, no roads. Crescent Moon territory was nature at its most unyielding, interspersed with bits of architecture that seemed carved into the land itself. They passed what looked like a meeting hall built into the side of a massive hill, its moss-covered roof blending with the landscape. Further in, she spotted homes shaped like large dens, reinforced with stone, wood, and woven metal. The air was quiet, save for birds and the occasional rustle of movement in the shadows. Other wolves, she assumed, watching.
Where are they? She asked.
Kael glanced back.
The pack? Observing. Deciding if you're a threat.
And what's your verdict?
You wouldn't have made it this far if I thought you were.
She didn't ask what he would have done instead. They reached a rise in the land where a curved building sat, part house, part fortress. Its structure was smooth, almost futuristic in design. Tinted windows, solar ridges, and thick roots wrapped protectively around its base like claws.
This is the Alpha Stronghold, Kael said. You'll stay in the East Wing.
Am I allowed to leave it?
He stopped walking.
You're not a prisoner here, he said, looking her dead in the eyes. But understand this. I am not your escort, and this is not your playground. You'll wander off without permission. You'll find out just how dangerous this territory really is.
Aurelia matched his stare.
You think I'm here for a vacation?
I think you're used to being in control, he replied coolly. That ends now.
She exhaled through her nose and stepped past him toward the door. Inside, the stronghold was sleek and modern, with deep blue accents and polished concrete floors. The scent of herbs and pine lingered in the air, along with something sharper, wolf musk. Not unpleasant, but potent. A long hallway branched off in 3 directions. Kael led her down one of them without speaking again. At the far end, he opened a wide door to a suite larger than most apartments she'd lived in during her university years. A sunken bath, bookshelves, clean linens, and a workstation equipped with tech she hadn't expected to find this deep in werewolf territory.
Your lab access is limited to your wing and the med building. A guard will escort you until further notice.
She turned slowly.
So, I'm not a prisoner, but I need a babysitter.
You're an asset, Kael said. That means you're protected.
She stepped forward, closing the distance between them.
And what about the other part?
He tilted his head.
What part?
The marriage.
His jaw tightened.
Ceremonial. For now.
So there's no real bond?
Not yet.
She studied him.
Do you want there to be?
A flicker of something unreadable passed across his face. For a heartbeat, his hand twitched at his side like he wanted to reach for her, but didn't.
That's not your concern, he said finally.
She gave a dry smile.
Of course not.
He turned and walked away, leaving the door open behind him. Later that night, she couldn't sleep. Too many things clawed at her thoughts. Kael's betrayal, the stolen Halo data, the way Kael looked at her with those eyes. Like he could smell every emotion she tried to bury. She stood in front of the mirror, undoing the ceremonial cuff they'd placed on her wrist during the border crossing. It pulsed faintly, syncing with her vitals. It was part protection, part leash. She stared at it, then at herself. In the mirror, she didn't look like the golden daughter. She looked like someone who had lost everything she understood about her place in the world. Her comm device buzzed on the table. A single message, no sender ID.
They're coming. He's not who you think he is. Don't trust the bond.
She reread it twice. Then, before she could process what it meant, something outside her window howled. Long and guttural. Not like the wolves in territory. Feral. She moved to the window and spotted a shadow moving at the edge of the tree line. Seconds later, her door burst open, and Kael stood there shirtless. Blood splattered on one arm, his eyes glowing bright gold.
Stay inside, he said.
Then he shifted. Bones cracked. Muscles stretched. His body morphed into something enormous and wild, fur erupting down his arms and spine. Within seconds, the alpha was gone, and the beast took his place. He disappeared into the night, chasing something she couldn't see. But in that moment, she knew two things. The danger was real, and so was the bond. Chapter 3. The forest outside the stronghold screamed with motion. Aurelia pressed her hand to the window, watching as the massive wolf tore through the underbrush, in pursuit of a shadow she could barely see. Whatever had triggered the howl wasn't a typical rogue. It moved like smoke, fast, fluid, and wrong. The security perimeter crackled with pale blue energy, as it held the invisible line between the pack's core and the threat beyond. She grabbed her comm device and tried to access the internal surveillance feed, but her permissions had already been throttled.
Figures, she muttered.
From the hallway came hurried footsteps and muffled voices. Someone banged once on her door.
Dr. Mercer, a female voice called. Are you all right?
Aurelia opened it to find a young woman standing barefoot in a tactical vest and cargo pants. Two long braids slung over her shoulders. She was carrying a holopad and a tranq launcher, but her eyes were sharp and focused.
I'm Lyra, she said quickly. Beta Rowan sent me to escort you to the med bay, just in case.
Just in case what? Aurelia asked.
In case the rogues break the line.
Aurelia's stomach twisted.
I thought the shield couldn't be breached.
Lyra glanced toward the window.
It holds, until it doesn't.
They didn't waste another word. Lyra led her down a dim passage through the stronghold's core, past metal doors and flickering red alert signals. Aurelia felt the thrum of adrenaline in the walls themselves. This place wasn't just a home, it was a fortress. And tonight, it was preparing for war. The medbay was already full of movement. Technicians prepped antidotes and defensive serum boosters, while healers stocked trays with bandages and shifter-grade sedatives. Aurelia spotted a toddler with a scratch down his cheek, being soothed by a wolf nurse with a calming hum that seemed to vibrate through the air like music. This way,
Lyra said, pulling her toward the rear of the bay. There's a private suite. Kael had it prepped in case you needed isolation.
Isolation?
Aurelia asked. Why? Lyra hesitated.
In case the bond activates under stress.
Aurelia blinked.
I thought the bond was only ceremonial.
It is.
Lyra gave her a pointed look.
Until it isn't.
The suite was small but secure. A sterile cot, reinforced walls, and two biometric locks. A hollow screen blinked faintly on one wall, showing a live thermal scan of the forest. She watched as a red heat signature, Kael, raced after a trail of glowing marks that pulsed and flickered, disappearing and reappearing in a pattern Aurelia couldn't decode. She stared at the screen.
Something's wrong with their heat signatures.
What do you mean?
Lyra asked.
They're not consistent. Look, See how that one vanishes every few seconds? That's not cloaking. That's a synthetic fluctuation. Someone altered their biology.
Lyra frowned.
You're saying the rogues are enhanced?
I'm saying they're chemically altered. That's Halo's core tech. She turned sharply. And it means they're using my research.
Lyra opened her mouth to speak, but the screen flickered, and suddenly, a massive red flare bloomed near the perimeter. The shield collapsed inward for a moment, then sputtered back online. Static screamed across the console. Aurelia stepped forward instinctively, her fingers flying across the controls.
They're hacking the power relay, old military protocol. They're using signal spikes to overload the internal nodes.
You can stop it?
Maybe.
Before Lyra could respond, an emergency light burst on in the corner of the room. Proximity breach, west wall. And then the howling stopped. Silence. It was worse than noise. Lyra grabbed her tranq launcher and shoved a secondary device into Aurelia's hand.
Pulse grenade. If anything comes through that door and isn't wearing a crest, throw it and run.
You're leaving me?
I'm circling to the north to check on the kids. Stay inside. Lock the door.
She was gone before Aurelia could argue. The room felt too quiet now, too still. She stood in the middle of it, grenade in one hand, waiting. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then, crash. The wall behind her groaned. A shape slammed against it. Massive, humanoid, clawed. Aurelia backed toward the console, breath locked in her throat. Another bang. Dust fell from the ceiling. She raised the grenade, fingers trembling. Then, suddenly, the wall burst outward. Chunks of stone and plaster flying across the room. And the thing that stepped through was not Kael. It was taller, thinner, and wearing a mask that shimmered with mirrored glass, hiding its face entirely. Its hands were long and clawed, tipped with black talons that clicked together like bone on metal. It moved in unnatural, stuttering jerks. It looked at her. Aurelia didn't wait. She threw the grenade. Boom! A pulse of light exploded in the room, knocking the creature back. It hit the far wall, shrieked once, then vanished into smoke as the security field reset around the breach. She collapsed to her knees, lungs burning. Then a new sound came. Boots pounding the corridor, fast and heavy. Kael appeared in the doorframe, half shifted, blood streaming down his ribs, his eyes wild. He crossed the room in 2 steps, dropping beside her.
Are you hurt? He growled, his voice rough and deeper than before. No.
She whispered. But it got in.
He stared at the hole in the wall.
It won't again.
She touched his arm, and the moment her fingers brushed his skin, something surged between them. Heat, pressure. A low thrumming pull that made her vision blur. Kael grunted, pulling away.
You feel that? She whispered.
I do.
Why
now? He stood.
Because you're in danger, and because the bond isn't waiting anymore.
She stared up at him, and for the first time, saw not just the alpha, but the man beneath. Wounded, furious, and scared. For her. He reached down and offered his hand.
We need to talk.
He said. She took it, and knew, without a doubt, nothing about this marriage was ceremonial anymore. Chapter 4. Aurelia followed Kael through the inner corridors of the stronghold, her fingers still tingling from where they'd touched. She hadn't imagined it. The warmth, the static, the sensation like her blood was humming in a foreign language. Something ancient had responded between them, something primal. The doors they passed were now manned with guards, silent, alert, and clearly shaken. Even Kael's own pack seemed uneasy. As they passed, wolves dipped their heads respectfully, but kept their eyes averted, as if sensing something had shifted between their alpha and the human woman he'd been forced to marry. Kael didn't speak until they reached a secured chamber near the command wing. The space was dimly lit and silent, save for the rhythmic clicking of encrypted data scrolling across a long screen embedded in the far wall. A single chair sat before it, and he motioned for her to sit. She did. He stood behind her, arms crossed, watching her like she might disappear into code herself.
That thing in the med wing, she said, breaking the silence. It wasn't a normal rogue.
No, he agreed. It wasn't.
I've read every case file on ferals and rogue shapeshifters in the last 10 years. Nothing moved like that. It was too fast, too coordinated.
Kael nodded once.
That wasn't a rogue. That was engineered.
Her stomach dropped.
You knew?
I suspected, but I had no proof. Until tonight.
She turned in the chair to face him fully.
Why didn't you tell me?
Because I didn't trust you, he said, blunt and unapologetic.
Fair.
But now I think you might be the only person who can help stop it.
Aurelia's thoughts raced. She glanced back at the data feed.
Where's the biometric signature from the creature?
Kael strode to the console and tapped in a command. The screen shifted, revealing a blinking waveform, the pattern she'd seen during the attack. He pulled up the signal comparison file. She gasped.
That's my code.
Kael's jaw clenched.
So it's true. Your research is being weaponized.
She stood, heart pounding.
It's not just Halo. That movement pattern, it's from an older version. A failed prototype I shut down years ago. It had too many side effects: paralysis, madness, death within days.
But someone modified it, Kael said grimly. Made it last longer. Made it stronger.
She turned to him, fear blooming in her chest.
Kala must have handed them the code, but she doesn't know what they're doing with it. She wouldn't...
Kael cut her off.
That's not the only thing. The bond between us? That wasn't supposed to awaken unless we had both accepted it. But the pulse, the one triggered when you were attacked. Something in that moment overrode our control.
You're saying the bond was forced?
No,
He said carefully. I'm saying it was accelerated.
her hands balled into fists.
Because I touched your blood?
Yes,
He replied. And because I mocked you.
Aurelia blinked.
You what?
He reached for his arm, pulling up the sleeve to reveal a faint golden scratch across his forearm. Barely visible now, but pulsing softly beneath the skin.
When I fought off the intruder outside, I tore it open on the shield. I bled. You touched me right after.
Her mind reeled.
That's enough?
For a pair like us?
He met her eyes.
Yes.
She looked away, unsure of what to feel. Her logical brain told her the bond was biochemical. Pheromones, hormones, genetic markers. But her heart, foolish and loud, whispered that it had felt like more. Like the universe had clicked into place for a second too long. Kael stepped closer.
You need to understand what this means, he said softly.
You're part of this pack now. The wolves will smell the bond, sense it. If we don't finish the ceremony, they'll see it as weakness. Or worse, deception. Her breath caught. You mean, complete the marriage? Yes, but that would make it permanent. He nodded. It would. Silence, then he added, I'm not asking you to decide now, but you need to be ready. The Hollow Claw isn't just attacking to send a message. They're trying to start a war. And they're using me to do it, she whispered. No, he said, eyes darkening. They're trying to break you. There's a difference. That night, Aurelia lay awake in her suite, staring at the ceiling. The room was warm and quiet, the walls humming faintly, with shielding tech that responded to her biometrics. Outside her window, the forest was still, too still. Whatever creature had broken through earlier had left behind a tension that hadn't faded. She couldn't stop thinking about Kael's words. They're trying to break you. Was that what her sister had intended? No. Kala wouldn't. She might have hated the spotlight, might have rebelled against their family legacy, but she wouldn't let Aurelia walk into this danger if she had known the full scale of it. Unless she had no choice. Aurelia sat up suddenly. The message. The one that had appeared on her comm device right before the attack. They're coming. He's not who you think he is. Don't trust the bond. It had to be from Kala. But what did it mean? Was Kael hiding something more? Or was Kala being manipulated by the Hollow Claw? She rose and walked to the console. The interface was encrypted, but she bypassed the main user field with a pulse of her access code and pulled up the network history. A single trace remained from the anonymous message, bouncing through 4 dummy nodes and ending at... Her chest tightened. The Hollow Claw's abandoned safe house in the southern marshlands. She stared at the blinking dot on the screen. Kala was there. At dawn, Kael stood at the cliff edge that marked the eastern boundary of his territory. Shirtless, arms crossed, as the wind pulled at his hair. His wolf had barely slept. Too restless, too agitated. He didn't turn when he heard her approach. You should be sleeping, he said. I know where Kala is. He glanced at her. Where? She handed him a datapad with the location highlighted. I traced the message. It bounced through several relay points. But the final node led to this outpost. Council records show it was abandoned a year ago after a botched raid. It's likely she's being held there. Kael took the datapad. You want to go after her? I want to bring her back before the Hollow Claw uses her to launch another attack. He looked at her carefully. You're not trained for field retrieval. I don't care. And I won't risk you getting captured. Aurelia stepped closer, not flinching. You need me. If they're using Halo, I can disable the signal. I can neutralize the chemical responses from the inside. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, finally, we leave tonight. She nodded once. Kael stared at her a beat longer. Then added, voice low. And Aurelia? Yes? If we do this, there's no more pretending we're strangers. She felt the bond pulse in her chest again. A tug. Soft but undeniable. We're not strangers, she said quietly. Not anymore. Chapter 5. They left at dusk. Aurelia was dressed in a black tactical suit that fit snugly beneath a lightweight, scent-masking cloak Kael had insisted she wear. You smell like clean soap and adrenaline, he'd muttered when she protested. You might as well paint a target on your back. Lyra and Rowan flanked them, each carrying silent weapons. Nothing that would ignite attention. Only close-range darts and toxin-laced blades designed to paralyze rather than kill. This wasn't a war party. This was a recovery team. But the tension in the air suggested otherwise. Kael walked ahead, silent, sharp-eyed, his instincts sharpening with every step toward the southern marshlands. The trees changed as they moved, taller, more twisted. The air thickened, damp and cool, heavy with moss and the faint scent of decay. Aurelia's boots made no sound as they stepped through the underbrush. But her heart pounded loud in her ears. She clutched her pack tight to her chest. Inside, she carried 2 syringes filled with a concentrated prototype, an anti-pheromone stabilizer she'd developed secretly the night before. If they encountered Halo-activated rogues, it was their only chance of avoiding a bloodbath. I'm picking up motion near the waterline, Lyra whispered through her calm. Multiple heat signatures. Small camp. That's it. Aurelia breathed. Kael stopped at the edge of a clearing. Across a shallow pool of murky water, hidden by a curtain of vines and overgrowth, stood the remains of an old structure. A concrete shell, what used to be a medical outpost during the Shifter riots years ago. Its roof sagged, windows shattered. The perfect place to hide something the council wanted forgotten. He turned to Aurelia. You stay with Rowan. You don't move unless I say. You don't run unless I fall. You're not going to fall, she said, surprising them both. Kael held her gaze for a moment longer, then gave the smallest of nods. Let's move. They crossed the clearing like shadows, silent and swift. Aurelia stayed behind Kael's left side, just far enough to follow but close enough to reach him if something went wrong. Her eyes swept the brush for movement. Inside the compound, the air grew colder. Mold clung to the walls like rot. Cracked linoleum crunched beneath their feet. They passed a room lined with overturned cots and another filled with broken canisters and spilled syringes. Halotech. Kael signaled a halt. Voices echoed from a back corridor. A man and a woman, arguing. She said they were coming, the man hissed. You said she wouldn't betray us. She didn't, the woman snapped. She sent the warning. If they're here, it's because you are sloppy. Aurelia's breath hitched. That voice. Kala. Kael met her eyes, then gave Lyra a single hand motion. Flank left. Within seconds, they moved. Kael kicked in the door with one clean blow. Chaos. 2 guards stood over Kala, who was bound to a chair with bruises on her cheek and a healing gash on her arm. She looked up as the door burst open, eyes wide. Before the guards could react, Rowan was on them. One went down with a crack to the jaw. The other took a trank to the neck and collapsed in a heap. Kael crossed the room in 2 strides and cut the restraints. Can you walk? He asked. Kala stared up at him, startled. You're him. You can talk later, Aurelia said, rushing to her side. We need to go. Kala's voice cracked. I didn't know what they were going to do with your research. I thought if I played along, I could find out who took it. You did more than play along, Aurelia said tightly. You helped them weaponize it. I was trying to fix what I broke. Suddenly, a howl split the air outside. Not Kael's, not anyone from his pack. Feral. Kael turned. They're here. Rowan and Lyra took positions by the door. The hallway behind them flickered with motion. Blurred shapes moving too fast, too silent. Aurelia grabbed one of the syringes from her pack. We don't have time to run, she said, but I can deploy the dampener. If they're chemically bonded, it should stall them. Kael looked at her, eyes sharp. What do you need? Clear line of sight, 40 feet, and someone who can get close enough to tag the leader with this. She held up the second syringe. Kael didn't hesitate. Give it to me. Kael, he leaned in close, his hand closing over hers. You trust me? She swallowed. I do. His fingers lingered for just a second too long. Then he was gone, moving into the corridor with the grace of something born in motion. Aurelia sprinted to the center of the compound, pulling out the injector. She dropped to her knees and opened the casing, fingers flying across the console to activate the dispersal. The green light blinked 3 times. Then, the scent-masking gas hissed into the air, invisible but heavy. Outside, she heard snarling, followed by a thud. Kael's voice rang out, "Now!" She hit the trigger. The air vibrated with pressure as the pulse exploded outward. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the walls shook with screeching, inhuman and furious, as the approaching feral staggered back, howling in confusion and pain. The pheromone suppressant had worked. Kael came charging back into the room, bloodied but alive, dragging something in his wake. A man, barely conscious, mutated, bones misshapen, muscles bulging unnaturally beneath the skin. Kael dropped him at Aurelia's feet. "Found your thief." Her heart slammed into her ribs. It was a technician from her lab, Jarek Vane, a man who disappeared 6 months ago without a trace. His eyes were yellowed and unfocused. "You did this," he hissed at her. "You tried to stop nature, but the wolves don't belong in chains." Aurelia stood. "No," she said softly, "but neither do people like you." She administered the final dose into his arm. His body spasmed once, then stilled. Kael watched her in silence. She turned to him. "It's done." But they both knew it wasn't. Because something deeper had awakened tonight. Between them, within them, and in the war that was coming. The bond had chosen, and so had they. Chapter 6. They returned to Crescent Moon territory under the cover of darkness. The hover transport silent as it cut through the trees. Aurelia sat beside Kael, her shoulder brushing his arm every time the vehicle dipped. Neither of them spoke. Kala slept across from them, her head resting against Lyra's shoulder. Rowan sat at the front, keeping watch through the tinted glass. It should have felt like a victory, but Aurelia couldn't shake the tension wrapping around her lungs like barbed wire. They had rescued her sister. They had neutralized one of the Hollow Claw's field agents. And yet, Halo's corrupted formula had already been unleashed. She had seen it in Jarek Vane's face, in the twist of his bones, in the madness behind his eyes. This wasn't over. Kael's voice broke the silence. "When we get back, the council will demand answers. And blood." She turned to him. "Mine?" He didn't blink. "Maybe." She leaned her head back against the seat. "Let them come." Kael's jaw flexed. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "By shifter law, you're mine now. This bond, it protects you from outsiders, but it binds you to me." Aurelia's eyes flicked to his. "Then what happens if you regret it?" "I don't," he said, a pause. "But you might." She didn't reply, because part of her already feared that very thing. The council convened before the sun rose. Aurelia stood inside the Crescent Moon Stronghold's war chamber, her shoulders squared, her hair pinned back, her hands steady. The great half-circle table was filled with holograms and live feeds. Council members from both human and shifter factions tuning in, projecting in from distant cities and guarded bunkers. Kala sat nearby, guarded but no longer restrained. Lyra hovered close to her, protective and alert. Kael stood beside Aurelia, still half-shadowed in blood and dust from the mission. Dr. Sim's voice filled the chamber, transmitted in crisp and clipped tones. "Let me be perfectly clear. If what you're claiming is true, that Halo's stolen research was used to modify feral physiology, then the program must be shut down immediately." "No," Aurelia said. "That's exactly what the Hollow Claw wants. If Halo is deactivated now, we lose our only leverage." "Leverage?" Another voice snapped. "You mean your ability to chemically control shifters?" Aurelia met the hologram's gaze without flinching. I mean our ability to create a bridge between species. A neutral ground. The formula wasn't designed to control anyone. It was meant to calm, to prevent rogue shifts during trauma, during fear, during war. But it was corrupted, Sim said. And I intend to fix it. A pause. Kael stepped forward. "Dr. Mercer saved 3 of my pack last night. Her suppressant worked. It blocked the pheromone surge from infecting the rest of the territory. Without her, we'd be burying children today." Silence rippled across the council. One of the older shifter representatives leaned forward. "Then what do you propose?" Kael's voice was steel. "We don't retreat. We push forward, with Aurelia, as Halo's new sole guardian. All files, all research, all permissions are to go through her. No labs, no contractors, just her." "And the bond?" Sims asked. Kael's golden eyes flashed. "It's real." Aurelia stepped up beside him. "We'll finish the binding ceremony." Gasps echoed across the transmission lines. Sims looked stunned. "That's not necessary. A ceremonial bond was already logged." "Half bonds are dangerous," Kael cut in. "They trigger instability, tension in the pack, and mistrust. I won't allow it. She stays here as my mate. Fully bonded. Permanently. Sims turned to Aurelia. You agree to this? She didn't hesitate. I do. The ritual was held that night beneath the moonlight. No press, no cameras, no politicians. Just the crescent moon pack, standing in a wide ring beneath the sacred tree at the heart of the territory. Its bark shimmered like silver stone, and its branches stretched high above the forest canopy, catching the stars in its limbs. Aurelia stood barefoot in a long white tunic that draped over her form like silk. Her hair was down now, tumbling over her shoulders in soft waves. Around her wrist, the ceremonial cuff had been replaced with a braided band of leather and silver, a sign of willing unity. Kael waited for her at the center of the circle, stripped down to his bare chest, marked with ash and crimson clay. His eyes never left her. An elder stepped forward, speaking the ancient words that bound heart to heart, pact to mate. Kael held out his hand. Aurelia took it, and when their fingers met, the bond surged like fire. No longer just heat or scent or instinct, but something older, something sacred, a joining of spirits that neither of them fully understood, yet both had chosen. The elder sliced a thin line across Kael's palm, then across hers. They pressed their hands together. Blood mixed. The tree behind them pulsed faintly with light, and the pack let out a howl so pure, so echoing, Aurelia felt it reverberate in her bones. Kael leaned in and touched his forehead to hers. You're mine now, he whispered. She looked up at him, breathless. And you, she said, are mine. Later, when the crowd had dispersed, and the stars burned lower in the sky, Kael walked with her to the Alpha's quarters. The night was quiet, peaceful, until he said, I think there's another lab. Aurelia stopped. Where? I don't know, but Jarek said something before he passed out. What? Kael looked at her. He said, Version 7 is already out. Her blood ran cold. There were only 6 test versions, she said slowly. Version 7 wasn't mine. Kael's jaw clenched. Then someone else continued your work. She stared into the trees. Someone else was building weapons. Someone else had Halo. And the war was just beginning. Chapter 7. They worked in silence the next morning. Aurelia sat at a newly cleared lab station deep beneath the Alpha stronghold. The room had been rebuilt overnight at Kael's request, equipped with a secure research terminal, containment lockers, and a biometric firewall that responded only to her. For the first time in weeks, she felt the hum of home, data scrolling across a screen, the scent of ethanol and copper, the hiss of a centrifuge spooling up. But this wasn't just science anymore. This was survival. Sample 32, she said aloud, logging her voice notes into the system. Reconstructed compound shows accelerated binding in variant A, which means the protein sequence is synthetic, not part of Halo's original design. Across the room, Kael stood with his arms folded, shirtless again, a towel draped over one shoulder. He hadn't left her side since the ceremony. At least not for long. Even now, he stood like a sentry, one eye on the data and the other on the door. You're sure you never built version 7? He asked. Aurelia didn't turn around. I'm sure. Then someone copied you. Or someone tried to improve me. Kael walked over to the counter and picked up one of the frozen vials she'd extracted from Jarek's blood the night before. The liquid inside shimmered faintly blue, not unlike the early Halo batches. Only this was more volatile, more reactive. She sighed. This chemical profile is different. It doesn't just stimulate dominance or fear. It enhances obedience. Jarek wasn't just unhinged. He was following orders. Kael stilled. You're saying it's mind control? I'm saying it's biochemical submission. If someone fine-tunes this, they could command an entire rogue pack with a single inhalation. He stared at the vial in his hand for a long moment, then set it down. And who would want that kind of power? She looked up at him. Anyone who wants to become Alpha of Alphas. Kael stood at the edge of the training grounds, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The bruises on her cheek were fading, but the guilt in her eyes had only deepened. Lyra approached with 2 mugs of something warm and spiced. I figured you could use a real drink. The cafeteria stuff is basically punishment. Kael gave a small smile and took the cup. Thanks. They sat together on a wooden bench, watching as 2 younger wolves practiced sparring nearby. I don't belong here, Kael muttered. Lyra shrugged. Neither did Aurelia, at first. Kael gave a dry laugh. Yeah, but she's brilliant, useful. Me? I'm just the screw-up sister who made a mess and handed over the key to a biochemical apocalypse. Lyra nudged her with her shoulder. Maybe, but you're also the only person Jarek trusted enough to get close. And that means you've got pieces we don't. Kael stared into her cup. He used to talk about something called the Sovereign Path. Said it was bigger than the Hollow Claw. Said they were building something new. Lyra's brow furrowed. New like what? I don't know, but he called it the real cure. By evening, Aurelia had identified a location ping buried in the metadata of one of the corrupted files. Coordinates mapped to a decommissioned observation post deep in the canyons just outside the southern ridge. According to the council's files, it had been shut down after a wildfire wiped out half the surrounding forest. But someone had turned the power back on. Kael studied the map spread across her work table. We'll leave at dawn. I want to go, Aurelia said, straightening. He looked at her. It's not safe. You said it yourself. Someone's still building off my research. If I can get a sample from the source, I might be able to reverse it. Kael hesitated. The bond between them pulsed like a second heartbeat, always present now, humming beneath their skin. The desire to protect her warred with the reality. She was no longer a civilian. She was his equal. And more importantly, she was the only one who could stop what was coming. He gave a short nod. We leave at dawn. Just you and me. That night, she couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but from the weight of it all. The marriage bond still whispered through her system. No longer overwhelming, but steady. Ever present. She could feel Kael when he was near. Feel his calm, his anger, his weariness. When she opened the door to her suite, she wasn't surprised to see him standing at the railing of the terrace, looking out over the moonlit forest. He didn't turn when she approached. You're not going to stop me from coming, are you? She asked softly. No. But you want to? Yes. She joined him, her hand brushing his lightly as she leaned against the railing. Because I'm your mate? He shook his head. Because I care about you. That came before the bond, even if I didn't want it to. She glanced at him. And now, Kael turned, fully facing her. The gold in his eyes burned like a low flame in the night. Now it's stronger than instinct. Aurelia swallowed hard. You still don't trust the council. I never did. You think they're involved? I think someone high up is watching all of this happen, and letting it. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Then we'll stop them. He slipped an arm around her waist. Yes, he said. We will. The moon rose higher, full and white and silent. Below, the forest waited, and somewhere in the canyons beyond, a new kind of enemy was waking. Chapter 8. Aurelia awoke before dawn, the scent of pine and wild rain clinging to the air. The stronghold was quiet, blanketed in the kind of silence that only came before movement. Before something big, she dressed quickly. Fitted black pants, a long-sleeve thermal top, her reinforced boots. She tied her hair back, clipped her utility belt in place, and moved through the corridor toward the operations wing. But as she reached the end of the hall, Kael was already waiting. He looked up from where he stood beside a tactical map, arms folded, his bare forearms dusted with dried mud. His usual scowl had softened. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at her like she was something he didn't quite know how to touch without breaking. Then quietly, he said, You always get up this early? Only when I know I'm walking into danger, she said, voice dry. He smirked. A beat of silence. Then, come with me. She blinked. Where? But he was already walking away. She followed him past the war room, out through the back of the stronghold, and down a forest path, lit only by the soft blush of moonlight and the faint glow of moss along the roots. They hiked in silence for several minutes, weaving through trees and brush until the path narrowed and opened into a hidden glade. There, a shallow pool mirrored the sky above. Mist hung in the air. A circle of old stones lined the edge of the water. Kael turned to her. This place is sacred to my pack. Only those bound by oath are allowed to enter. Aurelia swallowed. And you brought me here, why? He stepped closer. I need to know if you came with me to stop the war, he said slowly. Or if you came because of us. Her breath hitched. She didn't have a quick answer. Because the truth wasn't simple. It was layered, messy, heavy with the weight of everything that had brought them here. I came, she said softly, because you made me feel something I didn't know I needed. He took another step. What did I make you feel? Seen. Kael's eyes darkened. Not with anger, but with something fiercer, deeper, reverence. I tried not to want this, he said. Tried not to want you. I know, she whispered. But every time I got close, it felt like I could finally breathe. Her voice trembled. I've never belonged anywhere, Kael. I was raised to solve problems, not feel them. He reached up, brushing her cheek with the back of his hand. You belong with me, he said, and then he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't a claim. It was something older than the bond, older than politics. It was mouth to mouth, breath to breath. She melted into him, arms wrapping around his neck. his hands anchoring at her waist like he'd been built to hold her and only her. She felt everything in that kiss. The pain he carried, the restraint he'd always maintained, and the overwhelming pull neither of them could deny anymore. When they pulled apart, they were both breathless. Kael rested his forehead against hers. "If I asked you to stay," he whispered, "after this war, after the world stops burning, would you?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." He pressed another kiss to her lips, slow and lingering. "Then I'll fight for that future." She smiled against his mouth. "So will I." The wind stirred around them, rustling the trees in a sound like applause. The moonlight traced the outline of their figures reflected in the water below. Joined, finally, as more than allies, as mates, as something that could survive what was coming next. Because war was on the horizon, but so was love. And this time, neither would face it alone. Chapter 9. The glade shimmered behind them as they left it behind, hand in hand. Neither of them spoke during the walk back through the trees. They didn't need to. The bond between them now pulsed with clarity. No longer vague or reluctant, but whole. With every brush of their shoulders, with every step side by side, it sang of unity, of strength, of something sacred no council could engineer or replicate. By the time they reached the stronghold, the eastern sky was beginning to lighten, casting pale lavender hues over the treetops. Inside, Rowan was waiting at the entrance, already geared and armed. "You're late," he muttered, though the half-smile on his face betrayed him. Kael's tone was calm. "We needed clarity." Rowan's gaze flicked to Aurelia. "You got it?" She nodded once. "More than enough." Lyra appeared beside him, nodding toward the hallway. "We've got movement. Thermal pings at the canyon perimeter. At least 4 heat signatures near the abandoned watchtower." "That's them," Kael said. Aurelia adjusted her jacket, checking the vials strapped across her belt. "We have to assume version 7's compound is already active. We'll need masks and dampeners ready." Rowan handed her a modified canister. "Last-minute upgrade. Portable dispersal field. Should buy us a few minutes if the scent hits hard." "And what about you?" Kael asked him. Rowan tapped his temple. "Dosed last night with the inhibitor you made. Still hurts, but I won't go feral if I inhale it." Kael nodded. "Good." They moved fast. No ceremony this time, no drawn-out planning. Just the 4 of them. Kael, Aurelia, Rowan, and Lyra. A final team. As they crossed into the outer territory and approached the canyon rim, Aurelia's calm vibrated. She tapped it. The signal crackled. Static. Then a voice. "You're too late." Her blood chilled. "Trace the call," she whispered to Lyra. The voice continued. A low male register warped by distortion. "Version 7 is complete. You walked into your own trap." Then the line went dead. Rowan scanned the canyon floor. No direct movement, but there's something under the old tower. "See the energy grid?" Aurelia squinted. A faint shimmer rippled through the dust. "Camouflaged, layered in cloaking tech." "Subterranean lab," she said. "Not just a hideout, a whole facility." Kael bared his teeth. "They knew we'd come, and they wanted us to find it." "I'm going down," Aurelia said. Kael turned to her. "No. Kael, listen. I built this code. If they're using version 7 to trigger mass compliance, they'll need a control server, maybe a neural interface hub. I can shut it down, but only if I get inside." His eyes darkened. "You don't know what's down there." "I don't care." He stepped closer, cupping her face with one hand. "Don't make me choose between this mission and losing you." "You won't lose me." She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. "I'm not the same woman you met at that gala, Kael. You taught me to fight. Now let me finish what I started." He swallowed hard, then nodded. "Rowan, Lyra, protect the ridge. Aurelia and I are going in." The entrance was hidden beneath a slab of cracked stone. With Kael's strength and Aurelia's scanning equipment, they pried it open and descended into the shadows. The air shifted immediately. Metallic, cold, stale. Aurelia clicked on her flashlight. The tunnel sloped downward, reinforced with old research paneling and steel beams. Symbols lined the walls. Runes mixed with binary code. A hybrid language she didn't recognize. Then she heard it. A low hum, rhythmic, like a living machine. They reached a door, curved, reinforced, locked with a biometric scanner. Aurelia stepped forward, pressed her hand to the pad. It flashed green. The door hissed open. Kael's voice was low. "They're expecting you." Inside, the room was stark, clinical. Fluorescent lights flickered above glass panels, displaying hundreds of small vials, each glowing faintly blue. At the far end stood a man in a lab coat, tall, pale, dark-haired, and smiling. Aurelia Mercer, he said with a small bow. Or should I say, Dr. Mercer? Kael growled. Who are you? The man turned toward him. You must be the Alpha. I've heard so much about you. Aurelia stepped between them. Answer him. I'm Dr. Elian Korik, he said smoothly. I was Jarek's mentor, and your father's former chief of neurological research. Kael's fists clenched. You're dead. Korik smiled. That's what the council wanted you to think. But death, like most things, is just a story told by those who benefit from silence. Aurelia's mind reeled. You created version 7? No, he said. You did. You just didn't finish it. Her breath caught. He continued, voice lilting, calm. Your early notes? Your untested theories. You left them behind. I merely perfected them. What you designed to calm the mind, I transformed into something greater. Something cleaner, orderly, a way to finally unite all species under one will. That's not peace, she snapped. That's control. That's survival. Kael lunged, but she stopped him. What's your plan? She demanded. Turn everyone into programmable soldiers? Korik chuckled. Number only the wolves. Humans, as always, will lead. But don't worry. You'll have a place in the new order. As my second. You're insane. He pressed a button. The glass panels behind him opened. 5 figures stepped forward. Feral wolves in partial shift. Glowing eyes, breath heavy and ragged. Programmed. And then she saw him. Beta Ryle. One of Kael's old warriors. Presumed dead. Now corrupted, covered in surgical scars, eyes burning blue. No, Kael whispered. Ryle's lip curled, but his voice was flat. Orders received. Targets acquired. Korik grinned. Say goodbye, Alpha. Kael shifted instantly. Bones snapping, fur bursting along his skin. Aurelia yanked her injector, sprinting for the console. She found the neural link, live, synced to all 5 wolves. She reached into her belt, 1 vial left, only enough to break the connection for a minute. Maybe less. It has to be enough. Kael roared behind her, slamming Ryle into a wall, claw raking across metal. 2 wolves lunged at him, their strength unnatural. He was outnumbered, outpaced. She stabbed the vial into the main server port, injected. The system flickered. The wolves staggered. Kael struck. Quick, brutal. 2 down, then 3. The last fell to the floor, stunned. Korik snarled. You think you've won? There are more of them. Dozens. Hundreds. This is only the beginning. Aurelia tapped the screen. Not if I erase the code. No, he breathed. Goodbye, Doctor. She deleted the master file, and the lights went dark. Kael shifted back slowly, bloodied and breathing hard. She rushed to him, catching his face in her hands. You okay? He nodded once. You. Better than ever. They turned to Korik, but he was gone. Only a trail of blood marked his exit. Kael's jaw tightened. Coward! Aurelia stared at the dark console. We'll find him, she whispered, and we'll end this for good. He took her hand, and together, they walked into the light of a new dawn. Chapter 10. 3 weeks later, peace had returned to Crescent Moon territory, but not without scars. The rogue compound beneath the canyon had been sealed, its corrupted data wiped from every known terminal. Patrols still monitored the border in rotating shifts, and the remaining wolves recovered slowly from the psychological toll of Korik's experiments. Some would never be the same, but the war had been stopped before it began, and Aurelia Mercer was no longer just the council's chemist. She was Alpha Kael Thornridge's bonded mate, a scientist, a strategist, a symbol, and she was still learning what it meant to belong. She stood at the edge of the training field that morning, boots dug into the soil, sleeves rolled to her elbows, sun on her back. Behind her, Kala was overseeing the younger pups in scent training, laughing for the first time in a long while. Lyra was instructing new enforcers in pulse weapon disarming. Rowan was working on patrol rotations, and now wore the new rank of second beta. And Kael was watching her from across the field. With a look that made her heartbeat skip, she turned to greet him as he approached, a teasing smile already forming. Come to check on my form? I'm working on my combat stance, she said. Kael chuckled, brushing a leaf from her shoulder. Your stance is fine. Your footwork is still garbage. Rude, she said, narrowing her eyes. Accurate, he replied, taking her hands and lifting them slightly. You lead with your right. Always. It makes you predictable. You still didn't block me when I hit your jaw last week. That's because I let you. Liar. He leaned in, voice low against her ear. You're getting stronger. You don't hide in the lab anymore. I haven't abandoned the lab. No, he said softly, but you stopped hiding inside it. She grew quiet at that, because it was true. She had spent so much of her life behind glass and equations, protected by logic and distance. It had taken war and love to pull her out. I've never thanked you properly, she said, for believing in me. even when I was afraid of myself. Kael's hand slid to her waist. You don't owe me thanks. But if you want to repay me, she raised an eyebrow. What? Stop dodging your place. My place. He nodded toward the alpha seat, the carved stone throne that overlooked the gathering field from the terrace. Empty now, reserved for ceremonies or declarations. You're not just the alpha's mate, he said. You're a leader now. They look to you. They follow you. You need to accept that. I'm not a warrior. No, he said. You're a force. She swallowed. A group of younger wolves passed nearby, whispering, glancing at her with something like awe. Not because of her title, because of what she'd done. Because she had faced down a scientist who tried to rewrite biology. Because she had rewritten herself. And because she had chosen them. Okay, she said finally. I'll stand with you. Kael gave her a smile she rarely saw. Open, soft, proud. We'll make a declaration tonight, he said. A formal claim. You and me. Equal leadership. Science and strength. Mind and claw. She arched a brow. Very poetic, Alpha. Comes with the territory. That night, the clearing was lit by flame torches and soft lanterns that flickered in the breeze. Wolves and humans alike stood gathered beneath the great tree, its leaves glowing faintly silver under the moon. Kael stood on the central platform in ceremonial dress, black woven leather and silver insignia around his throat. Aurelia wore deep crimson, fitted to her frame with subtle armor, threaded through the seams, her mark. The twin circles of the mating bond, etched into the neckline in platinum stitching. Lyra and Rowan flanked them. Calla stood just behind, her smile quiet and sincere. Kael's voice rang across the circle. When I took leadership of Crescent Moon, I did so to protect our people from war. But peace isn't the absence of battle. It's the choice to fight for something better. He turned to Aurelia, offering his hand. I chose her, not just for alliance or strategy, but because she saw what no one else did. She made a bond of blood into something greater. And she's the reason we still stand. The wolves howled their approval. Aurelia stepped forward, her voice firm. I was raised in a world that taught me to chase perfection, to solve problems, to calculate outcomes. But none of that prepared me for Kael, or this place, or the truth. She reached for his hand. The truth is, peace is messy. Love is inconvenient. But when it's real, you don't walk away from it. You fight for it, you protect it, you build with it. She glanced at the crowd. And together, we'll build something worth protecting. Kael pulled her close, and their kiss was cheered with whistles, howls, and the pounding of fists on stone. The bond flared once more between them, stronger now, cemented not by instinct or politics, but by choice, by love. Later, under the stars, they lay together in the stillness of their quarters. Kael's arm around her waist, Aurelia's head resting on his chest. She traced circles over his skin. Do you think Korik is still alive? Kael's voice was soft but certain. Yes. Then we'll have to find him. He kissed the top of her head. We will, but not tonight, she said with a yawn. No, he agreed, smiling. Tonight we rest. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of his heart lull her to sleep. In a dark lab far from any known territory, a flickering screen lit up. Dr. Korik sat alone, half his face wrapped in bandages, one eye still glowing blue with residual energy from the severed neural net. Before him, a frozen specimen floated in a sealed tank, version 8. He smiled and whispered, Soon. The end. For now.